Welcome to Yobit Solutions. This video is a part of the series regarding managing your finances using Excel. This is the segment number 8. In the previous segment, we completed the total for each of the T accounts in each ledger and or the journal accounts used in the Excel file. The link to that video and the other video where we actually developed the ledgers and the journal accounts all are in the description below. So feel free to go through them if you have not watched those videos, and every video also contain a link to the Excel file that was developed as it was there at the end of that segment. In the current video, we will go ahead and complete the grand total from each of the journal and the ledger account against each of the T accounts in this column. And then depending upon what kind of account it is, we will convert that total back into debit and the credit so we can proceed toward doing a trial balance and then lead it to the financial statement. In the process, we will also make some minor changes to this sheet and do a copy of that sheet and convert that same solution for certain accounts or automatic accounts receivable and account payable entries, but only for those accounts where the pending status was reserved. If you recall from our video number 2 and 3, where we completed the design of our T accounts, we reserve the two columns here that jointly specify if any given T account that you use can have a pending status. The one column comes from the category side. Only those account by design which are equity or equity in the negative directions are permitted to have a pending account. The liability and asset accounts are not allowed. Uh, then there's a secondary distinction for all those equity accounts um, where the category permits that those accounts to have a pending status. So you have a further discretion if you want to turn that off or on for each particular account. The idea is you can convert it to true for only those accounts where you have not hard coded a specialty account for collecting the accounts receivable or accounts payable. For example, if we have an income in the sales account and the sales account receivable is not coded, you can just make this statement true, so the pending status will be available. And once the pending status is available, an automatic accounts receivable and accounts payable or accounts payable will be created in this particular sheet. So this is the scope of the current video. And before we go further and start coding it, just one humble request: if you haven't done so, please subscribe to this channel and like this particular video. We would greatly appreciate it. It will help us extending our work to more users like you. So let's switch over to Excel. Recall that the total that we calculated here in our previous video convert this to a two-dimensional array. And first we have to pick up each row worth of the data from this array against each the account and put the sum in here and then complete it dynamically. So the first step here would be, once you know which row you are in, you first need to fetch that row from the two-dimensional array as a single array. Like for example, if you want to fetch this second row, we can just put a simple formula of doing index and tells you our array would be number sign. That's a two-dimensional array on Q29. And then the row number would be, let's just say if you want the second row, and then the column would be a vector because we want to complete, we need the data for all the columns in the row, and we already have the column vector defined in here, and we can put a number sign to select the whole row, and if you click enter, it gives you the second row the way we did it. And if you want the sum of each of the row, all we gotta do is just enclose that inside the sum function, and that will take care of it. So that's the sum. Now let's do this dynamically throughout in this series, and the way we would do that would be using mapping function, because we have to go through all of the rows. And how do we do that? Start with a map. Start with map, and the array would be we would cover the J our sequence array, so we need to know the index. That would be the index of the row, and then we go with the lambda function, and we can call the parameter ith row, and then we have to define what do we need to do, and that is the sum function, and then the index, that's the exact formula that we just posted in here, and then that would be the master array is the q2, I believe, q29, q29, and number sign at the end, so that's our master array, and the row number is I row, and the column number is our column vector, which is this. Close the lambda bracket, close the map bracket, lambda map, oh, one more bracket here. Okay, so that completes the sum of our total against this accounts. Now, going to the next step would be how do we assign this value to either in debit or in credit. The goal here is if it's a debit account, which means the debit side is positive and this number here is a positive, then it will go into the debit side, else credit, and the vice versa on the opposite side. In dynamically, how can we do that? All we gotta do is you take the sum and you multiply it by the debit column. If the answer is the positive, it goes in debit, otherwise it's going to go in the negative. So that would be the simple formula for us, and let's just do this. That would be our map function, and we will give two columns here. One column would be the total column. We're doing the mapping for the two arrays, and other one would be our sign column. All right, and now we have to define the lambda function, and the parameter we can name, the first array gives the amount parameter, and the second array gives the sign parameter. And then what do we do with those? Then once we have it for any given row, we can just say if amount multiplied by sign is greater than 0, and then we would put amount multiplied by sign, and else we will put 0. So we close the if bracket, lambda bracket, map bracket. And that, so you can see that all the debit accounts goes in here. Like for this particular one, because the account was of the account is a credit account, so this one needs to go in that side. So the other formula is also very simple. Only thing we have to do is just put a negative sign in here. So I'm just going to copy the whole formula and put it there. The only condition would be we will multiply sign with a negative sign, because that will give the credit. The opposite, or the negative of the debit is the credit side. So if we put multiply, and then we also have to put a multiply here in the front, and this will take care of it. So that way you can see the credit account goes into the credit because the number was positive, or in here, if a number was a negative and it was a credit account, that means this amount goes into the debit side. It's pretty straightforward. So the same methodology that we did in here needs to do that in here as well, and which will I'll just copy paste those values, no need to go through them once again. So I copy pasted these formulas here, and our total and all of these items are updated similar to how these are done in here. So the next step here is how do we copy this sheet over, and also I'm sorry, I also deleted some of the entries here which I don't think we will need them. So next step here is to copy this sheet by making minor modifications such that this sheet will handle the pending accounts, auto accounts receivable, and auto account payable type of entries on those accounts where you allow the payable status to be visible. Now, before we go through the detail what needs to happen, let's first understand the math required to achieve it. What exactly are we trying to achieve? Here's an example. Let's see that you in your income statement, you made some sort of income, sales or whatever, and you cut an invoice for $100, and you also added the general sales tax of $13, and you just cut the invoice, send it to the customer. Money is not in the bank yet, and you have an accounts receivable account exist hard coded in your application, and all you will do is that the you will create a debit entry for those accounts receivable, and you're all set for, at that time. Now when the actual money hits the bank, all you will be doing it that you will create an opposite entry into your accounts receivable to nullify the previous entry, and you credit the $113, and then you create a debit entry for the bank, and because the money is now in the bank and your accounting system is fully balanced. Now, how do we handle that in our application is we also give an option where you can move the sales tax entry into the same line, and we also introduce a status for the complete. And this is exactly how you would handle in an Excel file. Again, for those scenarios where you already have an accounts receivable against the income account set up in the system. So no pending status is involved at this stage. Now let's assume that you have not set up the accounts receivable for this particular account, and that means you allow the pending status to be available in your design sheet as we explained earlier in the video. So how would you handle that statement? Would be you will only enter the income, the first line entry in here, and put the status as a pending. And by doing so, this new sheet should take care of account receivable entry here automatically under the hood. So it will be created or summed up by our new sheet, and you user do not needs to add these entries. Now when the money hits the bank, and then what you would do is you basically convert the status from back pending to the complete, and you will also enter the bank entry. And once you change the status back from pending to complete, this second entry here should be auto cleared by the complete status. So these two middle steps should be done by this new sheet in an automatic way, so that user don't have to enter these entries. Now remember, this is still optional. If you believe that it's too much confusing, you don't have to do that. You in fact don't even have to do this way. You can just stick to the first option here. The whole goal here is to provide an easy option, which I believe is better when, especially for those account. I mean, you can have a 20 different expense account, and if you start hard coding all of them, it just does create some of mental work in maintaining it. So that its option is there for you to avail if you wish to. Now the takeaway, what needs to happen mathematically? One thing you get a notice is that whenever these auto entries needs to be created or cleared, they must be using the gross, not the total. So that's the 113 is the gross entry. So that's one mathematical change. The second or the third mathematical change is if the primary entry was a debit, then the auto entry will be credit, and vice versa. So then account type in that duplicate sheet should be inverse of what the primary account entry is. So that's our second requirement. And let's go back and see how we can accomplish it. And in fact, we have already implemented that in here. I just asked you at the time when we were coding it that just assume this is the way it is, and we'll handle that. So let's handle where is this value used. First, finish the three items. If you look into our total that we are doing in here, and I'm just going to double click it, you can see that it's using the used range entry, and that is the differentiator. Let me just escape it out. And if you look into the formula, that is the differentiator between this setting. So if the value is true, it is the used is it's using the gross entry, otherwise it's using the total entry. So that's a simple if statement, and that is what is used in our total already in the system, and that takes care of our first requirement. Now the second requirement is you would be switching debit to credit and vice versa, and that is also already implemented here when we try to fetch the account definition type from our design sheet using the X lookup formula. You can see that we already had implemented it under an if statement, that if this is false, use the debit information, assign the debit information, else assign the credit. So we are flipping the account type, and that takes care of these two requirements. Now the other thing is when we are using this account to sum up the pending entry, this range here is also used in our account. And if you can click back in formula again, you can see that when this is false, it's only using the pending status, and when it is true, it's using both pending and complete status. So in our primary sheet here, when we are compiling all the pending and the complete entries together to build up our trial balance, and when we copy the same into the other file, we are automatically changing this to um, pending only. So no complete, only the pending entries will be added from all those sheets, sign will be flipped, and we will use the gross. And in a nutshell, everything here that needs to happen, we have achieved it. And other thing I have already done it pretty straightforward is entered a trial balance information, trial, which is nothing but the sum of these. You will add the sales and the debit for all the accounts, and same goes in here. I'm sorry, same goes in here, and this is also using our flag, which means when we're doing the trial balance under our normal transaction status, both ranges are added. But when we are doing the automatic entries, only these entries are added, and this will not be included. I mean, even though it doesn't matter because these entries are, you don't have pending status allowed anyway, so these amount will be zero regardless. So it's just an overkill in one way of thinking. So so these are the sum formulas, and if you go back and now try to do the look at the trial balance on this sheet, you can see the account does not appears to be balanced, and there needs to be, seems to be a delta of how much, $226. But if you flip over, those are the pending statements, by the way. Those are the pending transactions that I just entered in these sheets. If you switch from transaction to the our duplicate, you can find that exactly is the amount here. In other words, if you add this amount, add this row of data into the primary, our statements are fully balanced. So what we will be doing in the next segment would be compiling or adding this data and this data together in our financial statement, and we will complete the financial statement at the same time. Brings us to the end of this video segment. The link to this Excel file is in the description below, so feel free to download and play with it at your ease. And last but not the least, we humbly request again, if you have not done so, please consider subscribing to the channel and like this video, especially if you find the content helpful to your needs. And good luck to your financial journey, and we look forward to see you in the next video where we complete the financial statements. Thank you.